All right, so we're going to go back here to solving the inequalities. And so again, we're going to do this on some number line, but we need to factor here first. So we're going to have our asymptotes and our x-intercepts. And if we think about this one, that's a difference of squares. So that's x plus 3, x minus 3. Now this one, it's going to be 3x, x. Now factors of 2 are going to be 1 and 2. If I put a 2 here and a 1 here, what do I have? I have 3x squared. That'll give me a 6 and a 1. If I subtract, that'll give me 5. And I need a negative here, plus here. So it's going to be minus 6x plus 1x minus 5x minus 2. All right, so that gives me everything I need. So on the bottom, I have x equals a negative 3 and x equals 3. And those are my vertical asymptotes. Okay, so over here at 3 and over here at negative 3, we can't have those at all, okay, because we can't have anything on an asymptote. Now up here, I have x equals a negative 1/3 and I have x equals a 2, and those are my x-intercepts, all right? So x equals 2, that's here, that's a 0, and then I have the negative 1/3, so maybe about here, and that's also a 0. So now I have to have a test here. I have to have a test here. I have to have a test here, a test here, and a test here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tests. Okay. Now, what am I going to choose? Well, maybe a negative 4 here. Now, what's between here? Oh, let's try negative 2. Well, that changes sign, so that's going to be a 0. Maybe that's 2.5, and that's going to be a 4. Okay. Now, again, I'm just going to plug these into my calculator since we've already got a complicated thing here. So I'm just going to say, okay, well, let's plug those in. So we'll have 3 times a negative 4 squared minus 5 times negative 4, and then minus 2 divided by, and then I have negative 4 squared minus 9. And so what do we have here? Oops, my 9 didn't show back up. So minus 9, and so that gives me a positive. Okay. So that's going to be a positive there. It's a 9.4. Now I go over here to the negative 2. So now I plug in a negative 2 where all those 4s were. And when I get that, I get a negative 4. And so this is a negative. Now I plug in 0. Well, that's 0, that's 0, that's 0. So I get a negative over negative, so that's positive. So I know that one without even working. Now I plug in a 2.5. So now I have on this one 2.5. And here I'll have 2.5. And here I have a 2.5. And I get a negative in that region here. And so now if I plug in a 4, that gives me, let's delete the net 0.5s here now. That gives me a positive, and so that's that. Now I need it to be less than 0, can't be equal to, so I'm going to only have parentheses here. So I want this one, not have to have it less than, I have to have it less than, I have to have it less than, and so that one and that one are the only ones. So I'm going to go from negative 3 all the way up to negative 1/3 parenthesis union. Now I'm going to go from 2 to 3. Okay. And so then that would be my interval. And again, let's make that a nice 3 so we can read it. That would be where this expression is less than our 0. Okay. All right, let's do one more here. This one's a little more complicated because now we have not just a 0 on one side, we have some other things. So what we need to do is we need to take all of that to the left side. Then we're going to get a common denominator, and then we can actually simplify. So let's subtract 3x and add 1. So now we have that big thing, 5x cubed minus 12x squared plus 9x plus 10, and that's all over x squared minus 1. Then we have minus 3x, and then we have also plus 1. Well, actually, let's take that 3 minus 3x plus 1 as a whole thing. So we'll do it like this. So we'll say, since we have to multiply anyway, let's just do it all in one thing. So it's going to be plus negative 3x minus or plus 1. Okay. All right. Now we have to get this to have the same denominator as that. So I'm going to have to multiply by x squared minus 1 over x squared minus 1. And so when I do that, then I'm going to have one long thing on top, 5x cubed minus 12x squared plus 9x plus 10. Now I have a negative 3x cubed, and then I have a plus 3x, then I have plus x squared, then I have minus 1, and that's all over. And that's just really, if I want to already get my asymptotes, x plus 1, x minus 1. So that's my asymptote. So we're good there. Okay. Now what do we have here? Well, that we have to simplify. So we have a 5 minus 3, so that's a 2x to the third. And so then we have a minus 12 plus 1, so that's a minus 11x squared. I have a 9 plus 3, so that's a plus 12x. 10 minus 1, that's plus 9, all over x plus 1, x minus 1. Okay, so now I've got this. What am I going to do? Well, now what I have to do is I have to see about factoring this whole thing here. So maybe the best way will be is to do synthetic division. And so let's do 2, a negative 11, a 12, and a 9. Factors of that, I'm going to try a 3 because sometimes that's your factors. So that's how I'm going to try it. So 3, I have a 2 here. That's going to be a 6. Add that's negative 5. That's a minus 15. That's negative 3. That's a negative 9. That's 0. Okay, so 3 is going to be one of my factors. And I'm left with now 2x squared minus 5x minus 3. And so can I factor that? Well, 2x and x, 3 and 1, minus and plus, and that should be it. And so my zeros are going to be, are the x-intercepts anyway, are going to be 3 and negative 1/2. My asymptotes are going to be x equals negative 1 and positive 1. And so what do I have? Well, here at 3, that's a 0. Then over here at negative 1/2, well, that's a 0. At x equals negative 1, that can't happen. Over here at x equals positive 1, that can't happen. So now let's pick one, maybe a negative 2. Here, I don't know, maybe a negative 3/4. Here, let's pick a 0. Here, let's pick a 2. Here, let's pick a 4. So that's a test, test, test. Okay. All right. So now we need to plug everything in, and I think I'm going to go all the way, down to here. And because now when I've taken that over here, that's going to be greater than or equal to 0. That's greater than or equal to 0. That's greater than or equal to 0. So I want positives is what I want. So let's plug that in. So we're going to have parenthesis 2 times a negative 2, and then that's going to be a cubed, so I have to put parentheses to the third, and then I need to arrow down, minus 11 times a negative 2, and that's going to be squared, plus 12 times a negative 2, and then plus 9, parenthesis divided by, and then if we do negative 2 squared minus 1, we get that one to be negative. So we don't want that one. Now what about a negative 3/4? Okay, so we go back in and put a negative 3/4 in, and so we get 0.75, and then we get this one over here, 0.75, and then this one over here, and 0.75, and one last one, 0.75, and that's positive, and usually that's going to be the case. It's going to alternate positive, negative, positive, negative. And then if we plug 0 in, well, that's going to be a 9 over a negative 1, so that's a negative, and so we don't want that one. Now if we plug in a positive 2 and a 4, not at the same time, but we'll plug them in. Oops. Delete, 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 and 2, 2, delete, delete, delete. 2, and 2. So that's going to be a positive. So we want that one. And then if we plug 4 in, and that's positive as well. So we want that one. Okay. So what does that tell us? Well, now we kind of ran out of room, but we're going to go from here to here, and these are all positive, so we're going to go from here all the way that way. So if we write that out, what do we have? Well, we're going from a -1, and now this is greater than or equal to 0. We can't have the 1, -1, but we can have the -1/2 union, and then we can't have the 1 here all the way up to positive infinity. So that would be our solution in the interval notation like that. Okay, so -1 up to -1/2, and then 1 all the way up to positive infinity. All right, so that's all I have. So hopefully that will help you.